Welcome back to the Tamtara Grows series here on the channel. My name is Melanie. If it's your first time around, hello, welcome. Today's video, I'm going to share with you the irrigation I just got finished up. We did the salad garden area this time around. Last season, I got the potato patch done and the high tunnel area finished. When I started doing irrigation last year, the season was too progressed and the salad garden area was full of plants growing, and I didn't have all of the pieces, and every single day was 40 degrees and I didn't want to do irrigation, and it just took us a minute to get into irrigation mode, I suppose. But all the beds are empty. It's still early enough in the season that I've gotten it in the salad garden. I have just recently started calling it the salad garden, mainly because it's the garden close to the house, and it consists of these 6 raised garden beds. So if you've been here a while, I might have been calling the beds like the raised beds or the beds near the greenhouse, but we've expanded and we have so many garden beds that you kind of have to have a name for them, or else when you're explaining where to meet someone or where you left a shovel, you can't find it. So these are now, this season we're trying it out, we're calling them the salad gardens. And another main reason for that is because I'm trying to put all of the crops that are like fresh continuous picking in these raised beds. So we're gonna have pole beans, or zucchinis, patty pans, some like cherry tomatoes, peas, cucumbers, salad stuff, like fresh eating during the summer, basically not our winter storage crops. So that's what we're going with. We'll see how it goes. It's a problem Mom and I often come into, is like she'll call something a shed and I'll call it a barn, or like different trails. Like I call one trail the rabbit trail, but she calls a different trail the rabbit trail or the face, and we kind of have to get on the same page when it comes to naming things, or else we'll have whole conversations and like really not know what the other person's talking about. Is that just us, or do you guys have that kind of communication error that occurs? This is the area that I now refer to as the salad garden. So as you can see, we have 4 lines of irrigation in each garden bed. Now, I have no doubt that there are probably more efficient or different ways to wire this up or run this, but I really wanted to try and just use all of the corner pieces in the T, like the little connectors that I had, without having to go to the store and buy more, which I did these 3 beds without having to do. So I was pretty proud of myself. It was like a puzzle. This bed is just half the size, so it only has 2 of the connector runner pieces. The piping, you know what I mean? We got a little inline switch so we control right here, and then they connect the beds. I decided to have the little pipes that connect the beds. I'm gonna mess up calling those pipes and wires and water hoses a lot. Bear with me and my lack of irrigation terminology. However, the hoses run between the garden beds on this backside because we tend to walk on this side less. So hopefully we remember to step over those and they don't trip us up. Maybe we'll put them in ground at some point. I'm not sure. This is all gravity fed. So, I just about fell off the rock wall. Being gravity fed, it doesn't necessarily have enough pressure to go down and back up enough. I did test it out yesterday and nothing was leaking and it was all running, but there was more pressure than I had originally anticipated, so I'm thinking maybe it could handle going down and back up. We'll see. We're gonna just get it going like this, and of course we can unhook the hoses and dig them in. We were also considering like having them come up out of these kind of trees behind me and come down into the garden beds, but that would also require some more jimmy rigging than I'm really prepared to do right now. So they're in. There is 4 hoses per 4-foot wide, 8-foot long garden bed, 2 hoses per 2-foot wide, 8-foot long garden bed. And I think it's gonna be good. I'm really excited because I hated watering this area with sprinklers because I would have to dodge the house and dodge the greenhouse, and you just end up wasting a lot of water, like trying to get those angles figured out without spraying and soaking the house, or if the garden shed. is all open. Like, it was just like really not easy to water, and you end up wasting just a lot of water, and that does not feel good when it's 40 degrees in August and the Okanagan is on fire. So we like to avoid wasting water. Yeah, so this should be really good. I can't have them on a timer because they're on my gravity fed lines, like they're just connected to the totes up the hill. But that's okay because the inline switch is right down here, so I can just come out with my morning coffee and turn it on, and it'll be a grand time saver. So let's show you guys. So this is the 3 kind of closest to the greenhouse beds. 1, 2, 3. Loosely speaking, this is all subject to change, so if you see another video and it's not like this, it's fine. Shh. Squash, so summer squash like zucchini, patty pans. I've got cue ball squash, they're really fun. We'll be in this kind of front bed, and then we're gonna do pole beans and peas for picking on the trellis. Leafy greens mixed in there in that that middle garden bed, sorry. And then against the greenhouse wall is going to be cucumbers and some, I think maybe like baby beets, or I'm gonna harvest them when they're smaller so they're baby. And like a nice crisp variety of arugula and some salad turnips. Goodness, just fresh eaten goodness. All right, this garden bed that is right in front of the propane tank also has 4 hoses and pansies. Look at these guys. Did not plant these. These definitely overwintered, but they're so dark and like such an intense color for this early in spring. I love it. There's also, you can see them from here. There's some over here, some orange, bright orange pansies. Love it. And some leeks that happened to overwinter. My goodness. Strawberries that I took out a couple of out of this propane garden bed. And a bunch of other stuff that we overwintered here in pots that we have to find homes for. Holla at you, girl, if you need some plants. These 3 garden beds here are also gravity fed from our totes stored up on the hill, but they are a separate line from the 3 garden beds over here. So to turn on this watering system, I have the switch right here by the greenhouse. But for this garden bed and these 2 garden beds here on the hill, the actual switch for it is up here. So this is where we start this line of irrigation for these garden beds. You got the long bed up top here where we've got our blueberries coming to life, our Chippewa and Northland blueberries. That's actually probably one of my most, sorry, I'll get my shadow out of the way. A lot of people message me from that blueberry bush video. So they've made it. They're coming back. Up in here, looking good. Irrigation goes into this bed. Don't judge me, I still have to weed. Ends over here. Hose comes to this guy. We've got thyme, oregano, and tarragon in this garden bed. I'm putting bush beans in here this year, I believe. And then from this bed, the hose tucks in there besides the propane tank and into that bottom garden bed. Yes, I'm really excited about that irrigation. Honestly, it's gonna save me a lot of time, hopefully, if everything works out right. This brings me to the next very exciting thing, which we are in the shade of right now. I'm not sure if I shared it with you guys on the channel. I definitely shared on Instagram when I emptied out our garden shed, reorganized it, and painted the inside white. Turns out that it was divine timing and foreshadowing, because now we are getting quail, and we're putting quail in this little garden shed. So it's turning into a little garden shed slash garden barn. Quail barn. A quail abode. I had an incredible find off of Facebook Marketplace. I ended up getting my hands on a 5-tier quail pen, and I think brand new. It's $600 US. I do not live in the US, so I would have to pay for shipping and potentially like, what's that stuff called? Like border money for the border. I'm killing it with my terms today, guys. I haven't talked to the camera in a while, and I think it's pretty obvious. Anyway, I would have to pay to get it into the country. I would have to assemble it because they wouldn't ship it assembled. And that's $600 US before shipping and all of that. Customs, there we go, customs. So that was $600 before all that. I ended up getting it used in very good condition, local, about a 40-minute drive from my house, so that's local, because everything's a 40-minute drive from my house. I got it for $400 Canadian, so that's like a significant savings. It's here, I don't have to build anything. While Mom and I love DIYing and love building, it just takes time, especially when you don't necessarily know, like it's your first time building something, right? I've never built a quail cage before, so I'd have to figure out, like, especially that angle to have the eggs roll out. I would want one of those because it keeps them so much cleaner, and I think it just makes perfect sense for a quail cage. You'd have to figure out that angle, you'd have to build it, you'd have to get the wood and like the wire, and all of that actually gets surprisingly expensive very quickly, especially these days. And then you'd have to build it. And then at that point, there's this thing I do, which is probably bad, where I'm like, oh, well, if I'm building one, I might as well build two, because you never know, and you might need to expand, and what if one gets sick, and you need a couple extra, and blah, blah, blah. And then it's like chicken math, but with like structures and building projects. So these are the trays that go underneath each of the cages for their droppings. Obviously there's some rust and some wear and tear, but they catch poo, so I'm really not worried about it. This is what one of the units kind of looks like. This is the front. It does have that angled side that you can see, so the eggs roll forward, and it's divided into 3. It's also really nice, what's it called? Sprayed. The wire is sprayed, so it's nice on their feetsies. It's really hard, and I don't know if it's just Canada or if I'm bad at sourcing materials. I've had a hell of a time finding like 14, 16 gauge wire, even just galvanized metal or steel or whatever, let alone 14 or 16 gauged wire sprayed with this kind of plastic that makes it softer. So super glad that it comes with that. Obviously this is designed for quail, so they consider their little feetsies. Oh, I just about took my camera out. That would have been bad. It's got, I'm gonna have to look up some like instructions on the internet, because obviously this didn't come with any, but it has these little things that open in the front. I'm thinking maybe that's like for feeders or just to have easy access. Because to me that looks like the only way to get into these without opening up the actual cage. The other thing is they're divided into 3, and I think for at least a couple of these, I'll end up taking those dividers out and just have like a larger grow out type setup. My mom has a friend over and they just drove past me filming, and I know I've been filming and doing YouTube for like 2-3 years, but it's still the worst. Especially because like I know that this friend of hers does not know that I have a YouTube channel, so they're probably like, what is she doing? As I'm holding a cage half up. These guys can be mounted to the frame at different angles, so I think with my grow out ones I'll just try and angle it so that the bottom is not angled, if that makes sense, so that they will be on a flat surface. Honestly, I was just gonna get like 10 or 12, not 10 or 12, like 2 sets of breeding quail, so like 8 hens and 2 roos. So I only need 2 levels for that regardless, so I'm probably just gonna start there and then do any kind of modifications to the levels or to the cages themselves way down the road. There's a salamander. Can you see him? So So the other reason we're clearing out this garden shed is because we actually want to brood our meat chickens in here. So we have our big metal, like, galvanized water trough that will brood the chickens in, but we also want to have them like out of the elements and in an area that we can get electricity to so we can use their heat lamp, but we don't want to brood them in our yoga room again. Mom doesn't want the chickens in the house, so I've got to clear this guy out so that we can fit both the quail cages as well as brood the chickens. I actually think that means we're going to take a lot of our canning jars and the straw and extra mulches and other stuff. We're going to end up putting them, I think, in the greenhouse, because there's a lot of area in that greenhouse, especially underneath our potting bench, that doesn't have exposure to light and therefore is not used for plants. So I'm gonna start doing the long, arduous process of moving over all of our empty extra mason jars. My mother calls what we're doing today the glorious art of shed shifting. I mentioned it in another video when I was doing a bit of a tour and a catch-up on the progress on our off-grid cottage that I will be moving into here very shortly. I'll link to it above here, but we got a lot of things left to us from my grandpa, and the amount of mason jars and canning equipment that I'm moving today is also on the list of things that Grandpa Tony left us when he passed. That is my mother's father. I will not call him a prepper because I feel like there's a lot of negative connotation to that word these days, and people really just take it to the extreme and also classify any kind of preparedness into that category, which I don't feel like is right either. However, my grandfather was very old world prepared. He was Polish and Ukrainian and had been through hunger and being poor enough to the point where your only option was to be incredibly resourceful with what you had. And in many ways, I think that's an incredible gift for the younger generations, because my mom has done an incredible job in passing down a lot of that knowledge to myself and my brother. She instilled in us a love for cooking, for good quality ingredients. Am I out of focus? All of that jazz at a very young age, and also had us in the kitchen with her and taught us how to use food and use it to its fullest and not waste things. And even though shifting sheds full of things, my mom has shared this sentiment as well. It's a lot to do to manage other people's things. It's our stuff now, but we've had sheds of stuff that's not necessarily ours, and some of it's useful and some of it's 40 years old. But it often makes me think of my grandpa when I move boxes upon boxes of canning goods and jars. But he also set us up in a great position, especially at the beginning of COVID, when a lot of this kind of homesteading equipment was hard to find and there was a huge surge in the industry. My grandfather's preparedness set my mother and I up very well on our journey here in the homestead, and we use many of his tools, and my Bubba's rake and a lot of the equipment and stuff has just been passed down because taking care of your farming equipment was always something that they did. So it's an interesting headspace I get into when I move sheds and see things, and it's a weird thing to bring in that kind of ancestral contemplation, moving mason jars, but it definitely does that for me. That being said, there's not as many as I thought there were. We've been canning a lot more recently, so it's definitely a good thing to get them out of that shed. This way we have kind of better access to them, especially in the winter when we're fermenting and I'm putting jars away. Our kitchen counter this winter came inundated with empty mason jars because we've been using our stores, and that shed got snowed in, and we didn't maintain keeping the opening, like the entrance to the shed, open because there was nothing in there we needed until, oh, lo and behold, where are we going to put all these mason jars? So the greenhouse stays more easily accessible in the winter. So we'll be able to get in here, get more jars, put jars away, and hopefully stay on top of our inventory a little bit easier. I cleared out an area underneath my potting table. Hopefully not too much dirt gets on these guys. I'll put the boxes on top that can actually close. Well guys, I got all of our mason jars underneath this one part of this potting bench that we've got, and as you can tell, I may have created a little jimmy-rigged extension. This brown table piece here, it doesn't have legs. It was previously right along this side of the wall of the greenhouse, and I would put like large potted plants there. So like if I was starting potatoes, or in this white thing there's peas. But kind of wanted it out of there. Ended up moving it over here. Double laps, and definitely isn't like the most efficient use of space, and obviously there's a couple of laminated 2x4s on top of a hay bale holding it up, so it's not permanent, but it does get everything out of the way and actually gives me a couple more feet of grow space during our big push season here in the spring. So I got my little starts, just some basil and some flowers going here. There's some parsley and Brussels sprouts and peanuts actually starting. Some of the lettuce Mom started and we ate off of throughout the winter. And basically all of the actual pots and normal greenhouse supplies got pushed into this back corner, which again is fine because most of those are not in here throughout most of the season. It's just right now. Okay, I'm actually gonna have to end the video here. Definitely thought I would get more done today, but I needed to clear out that garden shed. I have to level out the ground again, move some more stuff out, bring over the big water trough galvanized metal thing that we use as a chicken brooder, get it in there, and set up the quail cage. But it looks like it's about to rain. This video is already long as it is, and I definitely got distracted cleaning and organizing the greenhouse, as you do. I'm brain dead, I'm tired. I scratched my leg real bad trying to sneak past the rack for the quail cages. It's bleeding. I tore my shorts. I'll have to head inside and probably clean it because I definitely cut myself on a rack for poultry, and I have no idea how clean or how dirty it is. Thinking about it grosses me out, so I'm gonna go, I don't know, peroxide it or something fun. As always, my friends, thanks for hanging out with me today. I will see you very shortly for another video. Bye-bye for now.